There's a good reason behind Brad Marchand being one of, if not the most hated player in the NHL. His dirty tactics such as slew-footing, spearing, and constant trash talk have put him on most players' shit lists. So, this isn't really a competition of who hates him because we know everyone pretty much does. It's a competition between who hates him the most. So, here are the top 7 players that hate Brad Marchand. Number 7, Jake Dawson. Dawson was the player who inspired this list simply because of Marchand's incredibly dirty spear on him. The Tampa Bay Lightning faced the Bruins in a must-win game on April 4th. Late in the first period, Marchand speared Jake Dawson in the groin as the two battled in front of the Lightning goal. Marchand was given a 5-minute major and a game misconduct, while Dawson fortunately avoided a serious injury. That's arguably Marchand's most dirty tactic yet. You don't just spear players in the NHL, let alone hitting them in sensitive areas like the groin. Though Dawson hasn't called out Marchand yet, there's no way he's planning to be friends with Marchand anytime soon. And you can't really blame the guy. Number 6, Mark Borowiecki. While the Bruins faced the Ottawa Senators in a December 2015 game, Marchand chose to deliver yet another ugly and dangerous hit. Big surprise, right? With the puck in the Senators' zone, Marchand bumped into defenseman Mark Borowiecki and then flipped him over with a dangerous hit right at the knees. It wasn't the first time that Marchand chipped a player, but he did so to Sami Salo during a 2010 game against the Vancouver Canucks. Marchand was suspended 3 games for his ugly and incredibly dirty hit on Borowiecki. This was yet another classic example of how Marchand has zero regard for the safety of other players. There was no place or time to hit Borowiecki like that, and he's lucky he avoided serious injury. But given how brutal it was, Borowiecki is probably not going to forgive Marchand for that anytime soon. Number 5, Anton Stralman. You know how Marchand has faced suspensions for dangerous hits on the likes of Sami Salo, Mark Borowiecki, and Derek Brassard? Well, imagine being Anton Stralman, another victim of Marchand's dirty playing style, and having him get away with it. That's what happened when these teams met earlier this past January. Once again, Marchand pulled off his dirty slewfoot play, doing it on Stralman and not receiving any punishment from the league. This slew trip on Stralman happened less than a week after Marchand did it on Kronwall and got fined for it. And yet, Stralman was given a tripping penalty on David Pastrnak a few moments later. So Stralman probably hates Marchand because by the NHL's logic in this case, Marchand's allowed to take out a guy's legs and get away with it. Well done, player safety. Well done. Number 4, Dmitry Kulikov. During the time when the Bruins met the Florida Panthers early in the 2015-16 season, with just over 2 minutes remaining in the third period, Marchand came up to Florida defenseman Dmitry Kulikov and viciously checked him from behind into the boards. Marchand was given a 5-minute boarding penalty plus a game misconduct. But when you look at it closely, it looks like another time where Marchand had the intent to injure a player. But Marchand somehow found a way to avoid suspension and fines for this. That's funny. Wasn't he given a game misconduct for that hit? Kulikov suffered a broken nose but managed to avoid serious injuries. But yet again, Marchand avoided suspensions for this hit. Kulikov didn't see any justice for it, so it's safe to say he hates Marchand even over a year after this incident. Number 3, Max Pacioretty. The Montreal Canadiens and Boston Bruins have had one of the most heated rivalries in the NHL. Boston has the league's biggest pest and dirtiest player in Brad Marchand, so it's easy for the Canadiens' captain Max Pacioretty to have a distaste for Marchand. He's one of the few players to publicly insult and take shots at Marchand. During a classic playoff series between the two teams in 2011, Pacioretty took to Twitter and said this, according to the National Post: "The game is longer than Marchand's nose." Pacioretty did later apologize for the incident, but taking that much of a shot just goes to show how much he really hates Marchand. Number 2, Daniel Sedin. Alright, So there's truly only one incident we need to bring up and show just to prove how much Daniel Sedin has rights to hate Brad Marchand. Also, let's go back to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final between Sedin's Canucks and Marchand's Bruins. Boston led 5-2 with just a couple minutes remaining. A brawl broke out between the two teams in front of Vancouver's goal, and Daniel Sedin stood by while Brad Marchand threw punch after punch at his head, trying to get the Art Ross Trophy winner to fight back. Daniel calmly maintained his composure and didn't bother fighting back with the immature pest. Sadly, Daniel didn't get his revenge as Boston beat Vancouver in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. That, along with Marchand's cheap shots on Daniel's head, are enough to put the Canucks star on the list. Number 1. PK Subin. The rivalry between PK Subin and Marchand may be past its boiling point since the Canadiens traded him to Nashville in the exchange for Shea Weber last offseason. But these two have really brought on a one-on-one rivalry like few other NHLers ever have. When the two players faced off in 2010, Subin leveled Marchand with a huge hit, catching him with his head down. A year later, the two got into a lengthy fight that ended up in a draw. The Bruins and Canadiens met again in 2013, and Marchand called out Subin, according to CBS Boston. Subin was asking me to fight. 3 or 4 guys asked to fight him, and he's running around scared from Horty. But he comes after the smallest guy on the league. It just shows you what kind of character they have here. Taking all of those incidences into account, it's easy to assume that these two hate each other.